So much has changed recently and is in progress right now, and some exciting things coming up on the horizon. So, we're going to dedicate this episode to bringing you up to speed on some important updates around our community, podcast, and our organization. You're listening to the PHEC podcast, episode 353. The field of public health is so broad, overlapping multiple industries. With epidemiology at the core of public health, there are an unlimited number of ways to target specific populations, health conditions, environmental issues, and causes that matter most to you. My name is Dr. Huntley, and I'm the host here on the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast. I'm an epidemiologist, consultant, and entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience in healthcare and public health. On this podcast, my guests and I engage in conversations that demonstrate the importance of public health and epidemiology across a variety of industries, helping you think outside the box and inspire greater positive impact in communities around the world. Now, let's dive into the topic of this brand new episode. Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining me on this episode. This one is a little different. I am joined by Laura. You guys hear me talk about Laura all the time, member of our team for, over 4 years now, and she's been on a couple episodes. How are you, Laura?
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's fun because we're having our actual catch-up meeting this morning, and we thought, okay, let's get ready. We're trying to time everything, getting ready to start recording this episode. I thought it would be good for us to take some time and share some updates with you on this episode, because so much is changing in our business with the podcast, and you only get a snapshot of things when you listen to the episodes, and I don't have an opportunity to really update you as much as I like to. So we, with intention, put a spot in our calendar and said we need to do an update episode. So instead of you just listening to me, it makes sense for Laura to be here. So Laura, thank you for taking some time and willing to do this with me. Okay, so I have some notes so that we can be mindful of time, and I can get on a tangent very easily, and Laura's going to help you not do that. But I have a couple of things. So no specific order of importance, but a few things I really want to specifically share with you. So let's start with the first one that I'm super excited about, and that is the announcement of our team expansion. Laura has been with us, I think, about 4.5 years. I really need to go back and look at the date on that, but she's been part-time, but just a very vital role. And she's helped with actually a lot of different things. When you came on, you helped me with a lot of different parts of the business, quickly gravitated to supporting with the podcast. And you've been, if you've been a guest, if you're listening and you've been a guest on the podcast in the last couple of years, you've met Laura. She's just helped us with so much. But now she has come on as our assistant operations manager. So not only will she full-time in a podcast support role, but really overseeing some of the other parts of the business, our consulting team and tier, as well as the support we provide for public health entrepreneurs. So how does this feel, Laura?
Yeah, it's so exciting. I'm so happy to finally be here full time working on the team. And it's been so interesting, being here so long before part-time, but being full-time to see all the ins and outs. It kind of opened the door to everything behind the scenes even more. So it's been very fun to see all of that and all the moving parts, and then being a part of that, helping things move as well. So exciting and fun, and just all the new things that come along too. A lot of moving parts, but I love it.
Yeah, you and I have been having this conversation off and on about, really wanting to make this, bring you on full time. For me, it's been great to have you in these conversations because, I would brainstorm with you and said, we're thinking about doing this. What are your thoughts around this? And you were always encouraging all of my shenanigans, as I said. That's a huge value add, so that having you with that familiarity across, all of what we've been doing and creating has been a big win for me, because I've been doing so many different things, wearing so many different hats. So being able to pass it off to you and you run with it. you take it out of my hands and you will just do it so much more efficiently because I'm trying to do too many different things. And you keep saying, like, I like that you like to stay busy and you do all these. So it's been wonderful for me. It's, we've been about, this is about the third week or so as we're recording. And as you've been full time, but already for me, being able to feel that relief has been great. So that's our first big update, and that is a big update. I always remind people about my team. We have a small team, but it's a really strong, small and mighty team. So now you're taking the lead.
Yes. Yeah, it's fun. And speaking of staying busy, why don't we kind of mention what else is new on our plate? The new and coming, or actually it's here. So
yeah, the podcast. So I mentioned it, I did like a bonus episode a while back and I mentioned it, but I really wanted to, talk about that a little bit more. So we have officially launched, I think it was April 1st, we officially launched Public Health Entrepreneurs Podcast. And it is completely focused on, I get to do a deep dive into supporting entrepreneurs, whether you're just getting started or, you've been running your business or an entrepreneur for years. It is the place that you can plug in and receive some insight, support, encouragement, some guidance. And it's been quite the ride. We started that podcast. It's been in the making. Like, I think I shared the idea with you at the end of last year and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And you're like, yes, it sounds like fun. And then we planned it out, mapped it out, got it started. And that podcast, as of now, has a schedule of twice weekly published. So we release brand new episodes twice a week on that podcast. So of course I had to, throw the challenge in there. So what has that been like from your perspective?
Yeah, it's been fun. It definitely keeps me on my toes. It's fun because, we've been working on the PHEC podcast for so long that we've kind of got this, a well-oiled machine now. So with the routines there, we got our process. So it was fun to add the second one in the mix, but to also shake it up a bit by adding 2 episodes a week. So it just kind of keeps you thinking and making sure that you're checking things twice. But it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah. And that was kind of my thought, for us to adding the new podcast. Well, from the strategy point of view, I have so much content. When I started mapping out topics, I have enough to last a long time because this is something the support we've been providing for so long, the questions that we always receive from people about, the curiosity of getting started. And then also the people looking for support who are already established, looking for that community of people, at this intersection of public health and entrepreneurship. So consultants and all types of entrepreneurs who, want that support, want that community. So that podcast has been great. It aligns with the book that I'm writing. It also aligns with the mastermind program that we have, which is a group program for established entrepreneurs. And so it just was nice to kind of separate off that topic and have its own designated channel, so to speak. So we're still finding our feet with that. But, like you said, we have the systems in place. We've been doing this for so long. So it was a nice challenge for us to see, let's see, we have the content, we have the, the information to share out, the questions to answer. So let's see if we can do this and deliver, twice a week. So
yeah,
so far so good.
Yeah. Yep. I was just going to say that.
Yeah. So I think that another thing, kind of connected with that topic is I want to point out in this update is, you may be wondering, well, what's going to change on this podcast, on the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast? And you've already been kind of witnessing it, just maybe not noticing. Having that designated podcast where I can talk about entrepreneurship and all the support separately. So that podcast, again, is called Public Health Entrepreneurs. So you can go to publichealthentrepreneurs.com and you'll learn about the mastermind, about the podcast, and all of the things related to that. Or you can just search Public Health Entrepreneurs in your podcast app and it'll come up. So you can go all in on that topic there. And then here for Public Health Epidemiology Conversations, it gives us a chance to kind of dive a little bit more deeply into all the things that relate to the applied public health. So we have our guests that come on and we intentionally attract and invite guests who are leading the way. And sometimes it may be innovation and sometimes it's an overlap with public health to really continue to show people all of the diverse ways that we can do public health differently, how we can apply our education, our expertise, our knowledge, and to hear from the people that are doing tremendous work in maybe a different niche or genre than you normally are hanging out in. So it gives you the opportunity to collaborate, connect, and hear these inspiring stories and journeys. It's a great place always for students and early career professionals to be inspired by the stories that they're hearing and what they're learning from the guests that we bring on this show, as well as, senior career professionals and organizations that are looking to connect with the movers and shakers and the disruptors in public health, the people that choose to be in this field and are passion driven and are making a difference. Like those are the guests that we'll continue to bring on this show, as well as, sharing more about our work in the consulting part of our business, because we do focus on serving BIPOC organizations. So nonprofit organizations that are serving BIPOC communities. And we have been doing this for a very long time, and we really doubled down on just this focus. And even those government agencies that have a very genuine and sincere interest in connecting more deeply and really engaging with BIPOC communities. We really enjoy that work, helping them to just communicate their information, their health information, their data, analytics, whatever it is, to the communities they serve. And sometimes that is, we serve leadership because, we need to be able to communicate between our departments and with each other as, peers. And then sometimes that is directly, those deliverables that go out to the community. And so we'll be able to talk a little bit more about the work that we do, in that area. And I'm excited about that. I was recently in Florida. I was invited to join community partners with the state of Florida Department of Health and collaborate on, as community partners, on how we can address, it was the topic of infant mortality, Black infant mortality specifically, why those rates are so much higher than the white babies and other ethnic groups, but also not so much why, but like, what can we do to reduce that? It was a very strategic meeting of the minds, and we did some exercises and activities. And that's where we really enjoy being able to join those conversations and being at the table, talking about, for us, the angle was, how are we communicating, and really diving into that. We've done for years a lot of work with the tribal organizations. If you've, listened to the podcast for a while, and Laura, you've worked with the tribal epidemiology centers, all the guests. I mean, you've been a part of that from the very beginning.
Yeah.
First started those episodes, and that's been several years. And we're helping them to even further develop. I'm just going to ease that out just a little bit. But, we get invited to support a lot of tribal organizations because of our longstanding relationship and work with them. So, we'll be able to talk a little bit more about some of those topics on the upcoming podcast episodes. It feels very exciting for me to be able to dive into kind of both of them separately instead of trying to mix them together. Some of you will be interested in both of these podcast topics, but some of you will be more interested in one or the other. So,
yeah. But I think it's nice to have the two options, just to keep it separate, but you can always listen to both too if you want to hear all about it.
That's right. That's another thing that's great about podcasting is that, it doesn't expire. Those episodes don't expire. So you can keep up with them, as they're coming out, as a lot of people do. But sometimes, like, I follow a lot of podcasts and I don't necessarily listen to every single one as soon as they're coming out. But if I'm on a walk, or if I've got, cleaning, or I'm doing something where I'll plug my ears and I catch up, or when I'll drive, I'll catch up on, some of my favorite shows. So that's one of the things that's beautiful about podcasting, is just the ability to be able to do that.
Right. Yeah. And speaking of listening to podcasts, you were just on a few recently, actually a handful.
Yes.
Let's talk about those.
I know. I was thinking, I was invited to a few podcasts months ago, because it takes so much planning. And then I didn't realize that, they would line up so perfectly together. So there's this wave of about 30, 45 days where I've been on multiple podcasts, and I've enjoyed that experience of being able to be the guest and then also be able to share my journey, to kind of open up with the guests. And like each of these shows, I feel like pulled out a little bit something different from my story. I think that's kind of neat. Like, you can be a guest or if you listen to podcasts, you listen to someone who's been on multiple podcasts and you hear something a little different each time. So let's see, the first one was the podcast that is hosted by the owner of the company that edits our podcast. So this is a little meta here. So we talk about our editors all the time, and we feel like our editing team is a part of our overall team. We've been working with them for a long time. But the owner of the company that edits our podcast, called We Edit Podcast, she has her own podcast called Business Beyond the Mic. Is that right, Laura?
Yep.
And so she invited me to be a guest on her show. We just had so much fun. I've had her on this podcast, and then she in turn had me on her podcast to just talk about the business of podcasting. So that was a great conversation. We'll give you links to these podcasts in the show notes in case you'd like to check that out. And then I was invited to be on PH Spot. Sujani was amazing. And we both realized that we've known each other for years. We're like, why haven't I been on your podcast yet? So she's been on our podcast a couple of years ago, but I was a guest on her podcast. And that was a lot of fun to just chat with her. She provides a lot of career support for students and recent graduates. So a little shout out to her. And let's see, by the time you hear this, I know I had interviewed with Dr. Joy for the Public Health Joy podcast. And by the time this episode releases, my interview with her should be released or coming soon. So spoiler alert if it's not out yet by the time you hear this. But that's another great. She and I have been in close proximity. I've been able to support her and she supports me. She's just a wonderful entrepreneur and I've known her for a long time. And so it was fun to be on her podcast as well. We had a great conversation. So make sure that you check that out. And then which one did I miss?
And then the Public Health Insight.
Yes. So the Public Health Insight is hosted by Gordon Thane and LaShawn Benedict, right? So I'm trying to remember. I didn't have that part in my notes, remember their last names. But they are some of my favorite podcasters as well. This is a small circle of public health podcasters. But the both of them invited me to be on their show, and we had so much fun in the conversation. So I didn't realize at the time this would turn into a 3-part series, but they're so creative in how they released the series. And I was a little like, oh my gosh, people are going to get sick of hearing me. It's over 3 episodes. But they did such a great job. I've shared all these episodes out, but my husband especially liked that one. And he shared with a couple of his friends because he starts bragging. But it's like, oh, I can't wait for next week for part 2. So they did the story in a 3-part series. They have a very unique way that they frame their episodes. So in the way they edit and put them together. So I would love for y'all to, we'll share, like I said, all the links to these so you can catch it in your time, in your own time. But shout out to all of these podcasters because podcasting is time consuming and a labor of love, but it's so rewarding when you stick with it. And I mean, all of the podcasts that I've just mentioned and these hosts, I never would have gotten to know them if I hadn't started my podcast and they hadn't started their podcast. So there's a special little connection, I guess, among podcasters as well. But especially in the niche of public health, I think that there's so much that it goes a long way in how we can reach our communities and have the impact that we all really want to be able to have. So it's a very collaborative family feel to be on each other's podcasts and supporting each other in this way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was just thinking, I was telling my coach, who's also a podcaster, I spent a lot of time with podcasters. I was like, everybody's going to get sick of me. I'm like on all these different podcasts at the same time. But I'm very, very humbled and honored to be a guest and be invited. So that was a great experience.
Yeah. And it's too, like you mentioned earlier, it allows us to see a different, part of you on each, everyone's able to pull a little bit more out of you on different conversations. So it's always nice to hear more about, the person that's always on the podcast telling us, the tips and the tricks. But it's nice to hear the voice, behind you and your personal experience and sharing your stories as well.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. There are questions, they have everybody's got a different, kind of a flair that makes their show unique. Yeah. And so there were some surprise questions and like little rapid fire. And I was like, ooh, I like to plan, but you're catching me on the fly. And so some of the questions were a lot. I mean, it was all a lot of fun. There's nothing bad to say about the experience. I appreciated it. And, really putting into context, I was literally podcasting and meeting and engaging with folks around the world, because when I recorded the episode for Business Beyond the Mic, she was in South Africa. And, we're navigating the tech little issues we were having at the time. And then, Gordon and LaShawn are in Canada. And we did a Saturday recording, which I hadn't done in a long time. When I started, all my guests were recording on Saturdays because I had to work Monday through Friday. So I can appreciate that that's what their schedule was. And then even Sejani in Canada. So it's just, it's just nice to be able to leverage, our geographic regions, and, podcasts allow us to do that. So a lot of updates. I think we covered all of them.
Yes.
For now, at least. I guess it's a really good idea for us to do. We have a lot of things, exciting things coming up on the horizon, both regarding podcasting topics and just some of our general consulting work. I shouldn't say general, it's general, but everything is super niched for us. But we've got some pretty exciting projects coming up that I'd like to be, and we're wrapping up some that I'll be free to talk about a little bit more on some upcoming episodes. But we appreciate all of you for listening to the podcast. I haven't asked this question in a long time, but I'm going to ask now, if you're enjoying these episodes of the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast, I'm going to ask you to please take a moment and write a review. Favorable review in Apple Podcasts will go a long way to helping us reach or attract new listeners to our show. And then also, please just share this. I do ask in the very episode, share this with a friend, but I genuinely mean that. This show grows by, we started out and grew quickly with people sharing the episodes. And we'd like you to help us continue to grow by sharing these episodes with someone that you think would be interested in checking it out. So, all right. Thank you, Laura, for joining me and helping me give these updates.
Yes.
We'll be doing this a
fun
little more.
To be here. Yeah, it's fun to join you.
I appreciate it. All right, everyone. Until next time, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Public Health Epidemiology Conversations podcast. Visit phecpodcast.com to find the show notes for each episode and to learn how to work with me.